can talk about biofuels, you can talk about your grand plans for offshore oil exploration, which, by the way, the International Energy Agency has poured a lot of cold water on. But let us face facts. Right now, you are hugely dependent on supplies of relatively cheap oil from Russia. And that, I would suggest to you, makes you geopolitically very vulnerable.
Well, even for the sake of an argument, even just to carry on the discussion, I think those facts are not correct. We have diversified our sources of supply, which hitherto were 27. We are importing from 39 countries. And
if I may, last year almost 40% of your oil imports came from Vladimir Putin's Russia.
At one point it was 38%. It's coming down. But today, Stephen, the availability of oil, nobody is vulnerable to external oil. There's more oil coming on the international market. It's not what something I'm saying. Where the IEA is right is that of the total demand increase in the next 2 decades, 25% will come from India. On that, they are totally correct. But today there's more oil in the market than there are takers.
But let's just talk about the short term. You made this big bet on taking cheap oil from Russia against the wishes of the United States and your
not against the wishes. I'm sorry, this is not against the wishes. The United States was.
It most certainly was against the wishes.
Not at
of the
all.
United
Not at
States.
all. Let me enlighten you. What the United States told us and told many others is that they wanted us to buy as much oil from Russia as we liked, as long as we bought it at a reasonable price. And that was music to my ears. There is no sanction on Russian oil then or now. None whatsoever.
Well, there's new sanctions now. Let's just talk about them.
Let me first.
All right, well, you made that point. Let's just talk about what Joe Biden did before he left office. He put new sanctions on Russian oil, including new sanctions on the shadow fleet of tankers that is ferrying oil, as we speak, from Russia to India. Many of the vessels that you relied on will no longer be able to operate. Some in India are calling this an oil shock for your country.
I'm not aware of anyone who has even a nodding acquaintance with the energy market calling this an oil shock. Let me share with you what actually has happened. There have never been sanctions on Russian energy per se. Russian oil coming or gas coming through a pipeline to Hungary has been exempt all along. Russian energy going through a pipeline to Japan has been exempt. And today also, Europe is buying 20-25% of its gas from Russia. So what the Americans, I was active, I was the negotiator then, said buy as much as you like, buy it reasonable. There was something called a price cap. Now it's music to my ears. If I can buy some from some source and I can buy it at a cheaper price, we are the winners.
Minister, let's get back to the point about the shadow fleet of tankers.
No, not at all. Let me tell you, because
I hope you have a plan for what you're going to do when these tankers can't deliver you the oil.
Because if your assumptions are wrong, then you come to the wrong argumentation. First of all, the fleet doesn't bother us at all. We do not use fleets. We issue tenders at the point of importation. We will decide, one of our oil companies will decide, we want to import X amount of oil, global tender, whoever can supply it, delivered at our port. So if somebody has a fleet problem, it's their problem. Now, let me come back to the basic. Before February 2022, we imported 0.2% of oil from Russia. Today, it went up. But even in those last 2 years, sometimes Iraq was selling more. The main point to note is there is more oil coming on the global market, mostly from the Western Hemisphere, than there is need for that oil. So whenever there is a situation of more oil available, availability is not a problem and vulnerability does not arise.